If you want to build anything great in your life, emotional self-discipline is the tool that you need to have in your arsenal. It is how you forge your destiny in times of distress. It is how you become a better, more disciplined version of yourself. And it is how you put something greater than yourself above yourself. If you have not been following this series so far, I'll suggest you highly do so, because especially this video and the last one, but the entire series is titled How to Build Emotional Self-Discipline. You're watching TruthQuest, and my name is Armughan, and today we are going to talk about emotional self-discipline part 2. And in this video, I want to pick off where we left. So I'll highly say that if you have not seen our previous video in this series, I'll suggest that you stop this, you go and you watch that, and then you come back to this, because now you'll have a deeper, better understanding of what self-discipline is and what emotional self-discipline is. Now, just to recap, we were talking about the triad. We were talking about what discipline is and why a discipline is important, is different from just becoming a machine. Discipline is it's more about controlling yourself. Exactly. That's what self-discipline, self-control. That's all about what it is about. But it's emotional self-discipline. What that is, we were talking about that. And when I also said that. We were also talking about how all these skills, like you can listen to all of them and you'll get them when you will be listening to them, and you'll be saying, okay, I get this, but they won't ever get you far if you don't practice them, and especially if you don't practice them in times of distress, especially if you don't practice them when your emotions, they're getting out of control. Because guess what is the best time to practice emotional self-discipline? What is the best time to take charge of your emotional state? That is when you become emotionally undisciplined, or when your emotional state is really going in so many different directions, you don't know what to do. That is the best time to control it. That is the best time to practice it, because the only way that you'll get is through practice. You cannot just listen to this and say, okay, now I'm emotionally self-disciplined. You have to put it to the test. Now, with that said, we talked about the triad. We talked about this triangle, and in this triangle there are these three different tools, these three different areas, three different sides to the triangle, which actually control your emotional state. And we talked about two of them. We talked about your physiology. That is how you carry your meat suit, because guess what, we are in this earth, we live as these spiritual creatures, and we have this body, we have this meat suit that we use to interact with this physical dimension, this everything that's around us. And this meat suit, it's very important how you carry it around, because if you're just to give you an example, if your meat suit is 1,000 pounds, let's say, I don't know if a human can possibly, biologically possible, it is to weigh 1,000 pounds, but if it's that and you have difficulty to move, how is your emotional state going to be like? But what if your meat suit is in a way where it's I won't use the word slim, but I would say it's fit. It allows you to move. It allows you to do certain things. It allows you to run. It allows you to do all these things. How is your emotional state going to be like then? What if you go to a room and you walk like this? That conveys a very different message. But what if you go to a room and you walk like you own the room? So it's all about how you carry that meat suit. And we also talked about this other thing in your brain, this other thing in our experience, and it is your language. And your language is basically the words that you use to communicate, also a construct of this word. And it's really, language plays a very important role in your emotions, because we give words to feelings that we can't understand. We give words to because feelings, we can't really understand them, we can only feel them, so we give these certain words to it. But the words act like filters. For example, let's say somebody betrays you, and you will say somebody does something bad to you, or somebody doesn't listen to you. And so let's take that example, that you asked somebody to do something for you and they didn't. You can use many different words to describe the experience. You can say that I feel betrayed. You can say that I feel hurt. You can say that I am angry. Or you could say that I'm confused. how the experience is same, but depends on the words that you're using, you're experiencing different emotional states. And to really drive the point home, I'll suggest you go back and you listen to the detailed explanation of how this controls your brain, how this controls your emotional state. Now, with that said, there was a third part in the triad, and the third part was focus. And we didn't talk about that. This is where we are going to talk about focus and how focus actually, how focus is a big role in your emotional state. Now, you must have heard of the saying that where focus goes, energy flows. It is a saying. I don't know who to attribute it to, because there's so many people who are saying it. Every other person is saying it, including me. So I will say that it is just a common saying. It's common wisdom that we know about. It's common wisdom, but not common practice. Okay, it's like it's common wisdom, but not common sense. That where focus goes, energy flows. Wherever you focus, there you'll tend to get that. You'll tend to experience that. And by the way, the story of your life, for example, your life is a collection of events. In those events, the only in that collection, the only events that you remember are the ones who you really tend to focus on deeply. And by the way, in the neurology of the brain, focus works miracles. But let's say, let's talk about focus from the perspective of the brain, or the neurological perspective. And neurologically saying, your brain, it takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of energy. It really, I think a huge amount of your calories go to running this thing, and it's a really small thing if you compare it to the rest of your body, but it's really powerful. It takes a lot of energy to run it. And your brain is also a very powerful processor, so it's processing a lot of information at that time. But it has its limitation. It cannot process all the information all the time that it is receiving through its stimulus. I'll give you an example. Right now, there are multiple things that you're receiving through the stimulus of your senses. And it could be like, for example, if you're watching this, you're listening to my voice. You're watching this. You're watching me, and you have a device in your hand, or wherever you're watching, maybe on your TV or wherever it is that you're listening to this to. You have all these different things, but the only thing that you focus on, hopefully, is me and my voice and what we're talking about. But at the same time, you have a heart and it's beating. You didn't tend to notice that until I asked you to, right? You're also taking breaths, right? Your breathing system is running. Or at the same time, there might be so many other things, like there could be a noise, a little hum, or there's all these different things that are going on around in your environment, but you don't focus on them. You only focus on this one thing. Believe it or not, this is very important to the brain, because if you focus on all these different things, you're no good, because you'll be taking so many different information that's like information overload. Your brain could just it's not able to process that much information. And by the way, focusing is really good for survival as well, because let's say, go back to the time when you're living as a caveman, and you go out there and you're hunting and you're all alone, and there's a saber-toothed tiger in front of you looking at you, and no, it's not there to kiss you, it's going to eat you. So at that time, all you need to focus on is that tiger. Because if you're also focusing on how beautiful the environment is, and you're also focusing on, oh, I'm in nature and look at the weather today, it's so good, you're already dead. You won't be here to listen to this. So all you need to focus on is that saber-toothed tiger, and all you need to do is honestly run, or it's fight or flight, or fight that tiger, which is not a good option, so run. And at that time, your system will be high on adrenaline and norepinephrine. It's also quite chemical, dopamine, all these things. Like this is on the neurology of focus. These are the brain's primary focusing molecules. And by the way, your brain also doesn't have a lot of them at the same time. For example, I'll give you a study that they did, is that they found out that the peak of these, if you're like working at the peak, the dopamine that you have in your brain, or the I think it's the dopamine and norepinephrine, these, when they are in your brain, they'll start to go down after just 20 minutes of production. So keep that in mind. when you're working or you're trying to be productive. That's a good thing to notice, that Pomodoro technique is something that's in there. But we talking about emotions is that, at the time when you're running away from the saber-toothed tiger, you need these chemicals, and these chemicals are basically focusing you on one thing, and that is stay alive, run. Very important. And by the way, this is how you make sense of the world as well. This is how you make sense of the world that is around you. In fact, there's this thing in our brain. It's called the reticular activating system, and it tells you to pay attention to things which are important to you. And I'll give you an example. Have you ever bought, if you're a girl, have you ever bought a new suit, and it was this new great orange suit? Or if you're a guy, have you ever bought a new car? It's the best car that you ever bought. And just after you buy the suit or the car, you buy your dress if you're a girl, or the car if you're a guy. Has it ever happened that you tend to notice that everybody has bought the same suit, the same dress, or the car? Has it ever happened to you that you feel like, oh, now, like, I bought this car, and for some reason everybody has done that too. Everybody is like, that's bought this car. What's wrong with the world? Are they trying to copy me? It's certainly not the case. What happens is, when you buy that car, the car that you bought, there's a very good chance that it was still out on the streets. It's just you didn't notice it. You didn't pay that much attention to it because your brain, it didn't register in your brain as something important. But when you bought it, your brain said, okay, this is important, my car, right? And then you tend to notice a lot of it everywhere, all around. And you tend to blame people, but it's not really people, it's a system in your brain. So based on that, we have these, you're focusing on different things. And based on what you're focusing, you'll feel that thing. You'll feel that kind of experience. For what you're focusing on, that is the kind of experience that you'll get in life. Because what you focus on, what happens is you tend to derive meaning from it. And one more trap here is that we create habitual patterns of focus. For example, if you have a pattern of focusing on what's bad, you might know people who have patterns of focusing on what's bad or what's wrong or what the government is doing wrong, or there's a conspiracy theory out, or there's the government is doing something really sinister and evil. If you always focus on that, you'll see that these people, they generally get a lot of reasons. They'll find a lot of reasons because they find what they're seeking. But what if you being really, it takes a lot of unpatterning, it takes a lot of rewiring of your brain to do, because it's not, your brain generally tends to focus on the stuff that's wrong because its primary purpose is to protect you. But what if you just really, you change that gear and you start asking the questions are very important, as we'll get to in a second here. You start asking the question that, okay, what's good today? What's good in my universe today? Or what's good in my experience of life today? And you'll find, I'm sure if you look, first your brain would go, no, nothing is good. The government, they raised the prices, my neighbor, his dog ate my grass, stuff like that. Just really, really earth-shaking stuff there. Your neighbor's dog really ate your grass. You shouldn't be worried about that. So, all these different things that you're finding, and there's traffic on the road. My boss shouted at me. I said hi to Sally. She didn't reply back. All that kind of stuff. It's really earth-shaking, I would say. But I'm not making fun of you. I'm making fun near you. Okay. So what happens is, that's your habitual pattern of focus. But if you change that and you say, okay, what's good? What's good today? If that's just like you are in a movie and you're a funny character and you say, hey, mate, what's good today? And you say, okay, you can find good things in your word. For example, I'll tell you a few things that are really good today, but you didn't tend to notice. And these are that the sun came out perfectly today. And no, that's not something that you should take lightly, because it takes a lot. It takes a lot for the sun to come out. No, they don't advertise it on ABC News. They don't open every 9 a.m. saying, The sun came out today. What a great surprise. They don't say that, but we should. We really should. And all the galaxies, all your solar system, the planets, they're all perfectly in orbit, and everything else in the galaxy is perfectly in orbit, and everything else in the neighboring galaxies and everything else, they're all running perfectly. And you might say, okay, but what does that has to do with me? I think it does. It does have to do with you a lot, because you're part of that. Believe it or not, you're part of all of that. And even if you say, okay, but yeah, I do understand it, but come on, let's come a bit closer to home. What you'll see now is, first, I think you should not belittle that. You should not say that, okay, because it's far away doesn't matter, and the only things which matter are near to me. No, you're a part of the entire continuum that this universe is, and you're a big part of that. So you're a small part of a really big thing, but you are nonetheless, you are a part of it. So you are a crucial part of it, and you're there, you exist. That's important. And by the way, what are other things which are good? For example, there are trillions of cells in your body. Every single cell, I hope, is working fine. Every single cell, or even if you have a health problem, majority of the cells in your body, they're working fine. And you wake up and you feed it Coca-Colas and donuts and whatnot, and it turns that into energy for you, and it's making by the way, don't do that because it's not good over the long term, but still, your body is functioning fine. When was the last time that you acknowledged it or you focused on it? I'm sure you don't do that regularly. So there's so many things which are really, they're going great, they're going good, but we don't notice that because we are always, we highlight, and it's like this magnifying glass we have, and if we put that magnifying glass on this, everything is perfect, right? There's this picture, let's say there's this painting, and in this painting, every stroke, everything is perfect, but there's this small little dot in the painting, like it's you can't see it that much, but it's a little bit out of proportion. It's like there's the imperfection in the perfection, and you focus on that imperfection so much that you tend to forget that there's perfection in here too, that you tend to forget that this imperfection exists in the perfection. That is what we are basically doing when we are focusing on this. But that doesn't mean that you should stop focusing on the bad things. All I'm saying is, give yourself time to look at the other side as well. Give yourself time to do that as well. Now, with that said, I'll give you there's this really nice exercise, but before we do that, let me think. Okay, so there is this really nice exercise, and this exercise just really demonstrates the point, and I'll encourage you to do this with me. If you're watching me as you're driving, I'll suggest you don't do this, but wherever you are, anywhere else, I want you to, if you're in the room or wherever you are, I want you to look around and look for everything that you can find that is red. So I'll give you 5 seconds, and you have to look for everything that's red. So go ahead. It starts now. Look for red. 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 Okay. Now, in the comment section, I want you to go and name everything that was brown. Don't cheat. Go down. Write it. And I'm sure that you didn't find that much brown. And you're like, okay, come on, man. I didn't see that. But, okay, now I want you to look around and find brown in your room. And then you can do that for 5 seconds as well. So, okay, look for brown, look for brown, look for brown, look for brown, and, okay, last second, look for brown. Did you find a lot more brown this time? What happened? Was it not there the last time? It was still there, it's just you were looking for something else, right? So you get what you focus on. You focus on the bad, get the bad. You focus on the good, you get the good. Now, before we move on, I'd like to invite you to join my newsletter called Truth Thursdays, where every Thursday I send bite-sized wisdom to help you unlock your greatest potential straight to your inbox. If you have not joined that, the link to do that is in the description below. It's completely free, and I send it out to your inbox every single Thursday. With that said, a really great tool, we also there's also this the meaning that we give to our life is largely dependent on the stuff that we are focusing on. And I'll give you an example. For example, let's say one day, I'm going to tell you the story of one day as you're walking to your office. You're ready and you're walking and you took the train and you have to cross this road to get to your building. And as you're crossing this road, there's a crazy bus driver, right? There's just this bus driver. We don't know if it's crazy or whatever. This bus driver, he really speeds by you and misses you by an inch. Like, you could seriously gotten hurt, but misses you by an inch. And you look at that bus driver and you say, what? People are crazy? He could have killed me. But there's another thing that you can say. That is say, oh, I could have been hit, but guess what? I didn't got hit. I'm alive. Thank you, God, for another day. I guess you still want me around here. See? Same situation. It's just, what are you focusing on? Are you focusing on the fact that he could have hit you? Or are you focusing on the fact that you did not get hit and you are alive? And based on that, you see how in that example, there's just a completely different meaning that you gave to life. For example, if you gave that meaning like, I could have gotten hit, you might start a campaign around bus drivers. If you're really, that extreme, you're a social worker, you might start a campaign around bus drivers saying that all bus drivers are crazy and we should hence shut down all buses. That's a completely different meaning. The meaning that you're subliminally giving to yourself is that the world is cruel. The world is out there to get you. To the extreme, if you take it, that is what you're telling yourself. But on the other hand, the meaning that you're giving to yourself is that, okay, I'm unique, I'm special. I guess the world, this universe or God or whatever it is that you believe in, it's like that thing really loves me and it wants me around here. And I guess I'm going to spend some time, and I'm sure that you're going to have a great day that day, because you're going to feel like, okay, I'm special somehow. I'm needed here, and you're going to do great things. Same situation, different focus, different meaning, right? And I'll give you another example. Let's say that someone who's close to you really gets some kind of a disease. And in that disease, or let's say that you're this is a common example. Let's say I will go with that example, that somebody who's really close to you is cancer, for example, and they're battling with that and they're having a hard time, and it's really taking a toll on you, on your mental health, on your emotional state. And in that, there's this one question that people generally ask in difficult situations, and that question is, why me? Why me? Why does it have to happen to me? Why should I have to see this? But then I reverse the question and I say, there's this really great question that you can ask yourself. Is that, why me? What's the lesson in this? How can I use this to grow? So you see the questions that you're asking and the kind of meaning that you're extracting from life. One, again, you're saying that the world is cruel, that life is cruel, and life is out to get me, like life is against me. And on the other hand, you're saying that, okay, why me? Like, what's the lesson? I have a problem. Yes, that's great. But you're taking that problem and you're seeing that in a very different light, and you're using that as an opportunity, as a challenge, as something that you can take and you can grow from. So you see, different questions, different meaning. Different questions lead to different patterns of focus. Different patterns of focus lead to different meanings. Different meaning of your life leads to a different life, a different destiny. This is how it happens. It's just you have these patterns within yourself. And again, I'll also ask you, where do you generally put your focus on? The past, the present, or the future? What are you most focused around? Are you focused around the past? Oh, I failed in the past. Oh, this is what I did in the past. Or this is what I couldn't do in the past. All the mistakes that you could have made in the past, that you had made in the past. All those things, is that what you're focusing on? Because if that's where you spend your pattern of focus, I'm going to say that you're going to repeat those, because you're trying to drive ahead by looking at a rear view mirror. Can't happen, my friend. Do you focus generally on the future? Oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to become this. I'm going to say this. I'm going to speak in front of the world. All those things. That's great. But generally, when something happens, you might say, okay, I can get there. And again, or are you focusing on the present? Where are you focusing on? Just ask yourself these questions. Where do you generally put your focus around? And another thing is, are you focusing on what's good? In any situation that happens, what is the question that you ask yourself? What's bad or what's good? But good and bad, again, are relative terms, but again, you can still find wherever there's bad, there's also good in it as well. It's just both things exist at the same time. It's just what you tend to focus on. If you tend to focus on the bad, you'll find more and more of that. If you tend to focus on the good, you'll find more and more of that as well. And I'll give you another example. Let's say I'll ask you another question. That do you generally focus on the pain or the strength? Because a lot of strength actually comes from the pain that you're experiencing in life. Emotional pain, physical pain. When you're in the gym, you're lifting heavy, it's painful. But a lot of strength comes from that. Same is true with emotional weightlifting. If you're dealing with something that is emotionally heavy, a lot of strength can come from that. So what are you focusing on? The pain, or are you magnifying that pain? Yes, in the moment you must be experiencing it. But I'll give you an example. I'll give you something, a really nice story. I'm saying the word example a lot, man. But I'll give you a nice story. Is that, the people, soldiers, when they're fighting, they'll go for days sometimes without eating, or sometimes even without sleeping. How is that possible? And they'll go and they'll do that. Why? How did they do that? Yes, of course, they have training. But more than that, I think that they are focusing on something that is so bigger than themselves. That is their nation. They are fighting for something that is greater than themselves. That they just really, they find the superhuman almost kind of strength to push themselves through. Right? So it's like you change the frame that you're looking at from. So you have this frame, as if you must have realized by now that you have this frame that you look at life from. And if you change the frame, you change the meaning. You change the kind of life experience that you're having. You change that, you change your destiny. This is how it happens. But you have to work to do that. How do you do that? Ask yourself better questions. That's it. Ask yourself questions. Ask yourself quality questions. Because if you ask yourself questions like, why am I a pig? Your brain is an answering machine. It will have to give you an answer. For example, if you ask yourself a question, why am I so fat? Your brain will come up with an answer saying, because you're big. Or if you ask yourself a question, okay, what can I do to get healthy? What can I do to start working out? What can I do, or how can I start? Brain is going to give you the answer. If you don't have the answer, it's going to find the answer for you, because what happens is you'll be on the internet, YouTube, somewhere, and you'll find this kind of thing and you'll pay attention to it, because that's the question that you ask your mind, and it has to give you the answer. So better quality questions. So are you focusing on what's good or what's bad? Are you focusing on how it could go wrong, or are you focusing on how it could go right? In this scenario, both are important, because expect the best and prepare for the worst. Both are very important. Yet, in scenarios where things have happened and you can't change it, for example, let's say something bad has happened, are you focusing on what happened, or are you focusing on what you could do about it? You could have 10, 20 years of living a life that is really unorganized, or you can eat everything and it's like your life is really out of place. Are you, at the end of those 20 years, you still have the same choice? Are you focusing on what you did, or are you focusing on what you could do and how you could change? So change your focus, my friends. Change the kind of questions that you're asking yourself. Change the quality of the question that you're asking yourself, and it will lead to a completely different life. And in the end, I want to tell you this really cool story that Tony Robbins told in all of his seminars and everywhere else. And this story is really essential to how we look at life. And this was the story of him. He was living with his family at that time, and his mother, he always had different fathers. I think he had 4 different fathers, and he was living at that time. He was, I don't know, with the second or the third one, and it was Thanksgiving, and they were really poor, and they didn't have food. And so what happens is, their mom and dad are fighting, and the both of them are fighting that they don't have food, and he is being the elder brother. He's protecting he's trying to keep his siblings cool and calm. And so there's a ring on the bell. There's a ring on the door. Goes there, and he opens the door, and there's this guy holding up like a full package of food. And he sees that, and he's really happy. And he runs back, and he says, "Oh, let me call my father." And he goes there, calls his dad. They come to the door, and his dad, really angry, being the man he is, he says, "Thank you, we don't accept charity." And he's trying to slam the door back, where this guy, he just literally puts his shoulder in the door, and he just says, "Listen, mister, it's not charity. I'm not doing this. Somebody is warm enough to care for you, and they just want to give this to you." And he still doesn't accept it, but he says, okay. He says, "No, I'm not going to do this." But they really almost get into a fight. But then he says, "Fine." And he takes that, and he brings that in, slams it on the table. And Tony, by the way, he's really happy. Obviously there's food. Now, the same thing happened, but his dad felt a different way. And Tony himself, he felt a different way. It's because of 3 questions that they ask themselves, and we ask ourselves subconsciously. And these questions are, what am I going to focus on? And so what Tony focused on was that there's food. And the second question is, what does this mean? And what Tony focused on was that this means that our family doesn't have to starve. It's Thanksgiving. And the third question is, what am I going to do about it? I'm going to accept this. That's what Tony said. But for his father, it was completely different. It was, the answer to the question is, what am I going to focus on? Is that they focus on, this is charity, and what does this mean? What am I going to focus on? The answer for that question for him was, this is charity, I don't accept charity. What is it does that mean? And what that meant for him is that, okay, I have failed as a man to put food on the table. So I have failed. And so what am I going to do about it? What his dad did that day was leave his family, because he felt like a failure, so he left. So you see how same event, different answers to these questions, completely different life choice. And making these questions, asking ourselves these questions subconsciously a lot of the time. So with that said, I'll leave you with that. And in the next episode, we are going to talk about emotional anti-fragility. With that said, take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Hey, if you've enjoyed watching this video, don't forget to watch this video on my side. It also relates to personal development, philosophy, and practicalism. And also, don't forget to subscribe. Continue seeking truth and become a truth seeker.